Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 128. As you can see, I have my Knicks hat on. I've been wearing this hat every day since the end of the season. We had a nail biter on Tuesday. Knicks lost in overtime to the Sixers. I mean, kudos to the Sixers, especially Maxey, who just went berserk on us in the last 30 seconds of the game. But we're back in Philly tonight. And hopefully by the time this podcast airs, the Knicks will have advanced to the second round of the playoffs. I hope. But big game tonight. Game 6 of our series with the Sixers. So fingers crossed the doc is going to be watching. And hopefully we'll all be celebrating the Knicks win when this podcast comes out. Beautiful weather here in New York. I mean, it was like 80-something degrees here on Monday. Felt like summer. But then overnight just cooled down. Then it was, it was actually kind of cool on Tuesday. But it's, spring/summer. Taste of summer was in the air. Spring is fully in the air. The leaves have trees on them. I mean, the leaves have trees. The trees have leaves on them in New York. All the cherry blossoms and the beautiful flowering trees and the azaleas. I have a Japanese dogwood or a few Japanese dogwoods in my yard, which are blooming beautifully. So, spring is in the air and just feels good. Golf season is upon us. Baseball started. But like I said, number one right here. Number one priority is Knicks getting to the second round. But that being said, that's enough small talk and updates. Let's dive right into the contents of this podcast. This is kind of like a hashtag thoughts of the week style podcast. And, I was away for a good part of last week. I went with my family down to Mexico for a few days. My kids were off from school for the Passover holiday, and we had a wonderful stay down there. The weather was beautiful, and came back. Actually, my wife and I we flew back on Thursday night, and my wife and I actually both had very busy days in the office on Friday, and kind of just dove right back into work. And, as any small business owner will tell you, basically what I'm running is a small business, my dermatology office. I have about 10 employees, 2 offices, and really the most important, the most important asset to my practice are my people. And I'm blessed to have a great staff, but there's always turnover and stuff with staff. I've spoken about it, many, many times. Folks go off to school or move or move out of healthcare into other fields and that sort of stuff. So anytime that happens, because we run such a small office, there's always a little bit of turbulence in the boat. And navigating through that is always there's periods of calm and then there's periods of chaos. It's always a bit stressful. And, every time it happens, I've been doing this now. My practice has been open for 15 years and, I've probably done this 30 times in 15 years. Sometimes are more painful than others, but, you learn something every time you go through these. I mean, I wouldn't quite call them hardships, but these these little minor setbacks when you're running a business. As the practice has gotten busier and busier, there's patients that just need to be taken care of and be seen. So regardless of my staffing issues, it's we still need to get the work done, still need to take care of our patients and get the job done. So when you are short staffed, you kind of feel the pain of that. So sometimes, we bring a new staff member on and, it takes time. It's just a normal process. It takes time to get acclimated to the way we do things in the office, my particular nuances, seeing patients. And our expectation is never that someone's going to jump in and, just be ready to roll. Although that has happened a couple of times, which is literally a gift from God when someone just pops in and can seamlessly, just assume whatever responsibilities are part of the job at hand. But, that's much more the exception than the rule. And, when there's problems these are, it's a small problem, but it's still a problem. It's something, there's a little minor setback in the, the fluidity of my operations, I'll say. It's challenging, but something I've learned, and I think I'm getting better at this each time this happens. I guess, you can sometimes teach an old dog new tricks, but there's always a solution, and sometimes that solution is not patently obvious. And, you got to kind of like, sleep on it for a few days or get inspiration from somewhere. And one of my, current employee, but kind of helps me on the side with more like sort of high end tasks, used to be my number one, ride or die medical assistant slash office manager. But she's still very much part of the fabric of the practice, although she's not with me on day-to-day basis seeing patients. She's still very much involved in decision making in the practice. She's someone whose judgment I trust tremendously, basically like a family member. And I run all sorts of ideas, all my crazy ideas and stuff by her before I make a decision. It's kind of like my sounding board and someone who helps me with more high level stuff in the office. And we're going to be short-staffed a little bit towards the end of the month. Someone's going to be on vacation, and obviously, like I said, the patients still need to be seen. So we were kind of like troubleshooting and trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that week and get through all our patient care stuff. And she mentioned to me that she might be able to come in actually and get her boots on the ground and help me out a little bit, which was obviously I'm very excited. It's kind of like getting the band back together. But it actually had me thinking. I was like, well, kind of inspired a potential solution. So. I have an assistant in my New York City office, wonderful person, great attitude, just pleasure to be around. But like I said, anyone who comes into the mix, there's a learning curve. If you've never really worked that much in dermatology, you have to learn all of the dermatology stuff. And then, of course, there's all my quirks and nuances of the way I see patients and how I do things. And obviously, no one knows that until they work with you for a while. But it actually had me thinking, really the solution to this particular problem is a training issue. If I could bring this new staff member up to speed and have someone who is, acclimated with the way I do things, help facilitate that, then, everyone is going to be happy. She's going to learn and, kind of pick up the system much quicker than just kind of piecemealing it on a day-to-day basis, seeing patients with me. And, I think that'll give her a lot of confidence and help her succeed in the job. And of course, everyone feels good when they're doing something well, and obviously it'll help me. It'll make my life easier because I'll have an assistant who's completely up to speed. So I actually I had an assistant who was working with me, who had to move out of the area. But it occurred to me, I was like, maybe I'll reach out to this person who was a great assistant and say, hey, you got a couple of days. I'm not sure what you're up to, but if you have a couple of days or a couple of hours a week to come in, help us out, maybe do a little training, just to help me get a new staff member up to speed, it would be, obviously very, very helpful to me. But maybe she's looking for some extra hours and, earning some extra income. So it could be potentially valuable to my former assistant as well. And, I shot her a text yesterday and I said, hey, listen, this is the situation. I'm not sure if you got a few hours to spare or what you're up to these days, but I'd love to have you come back for a couple of days a week, just like a few hours a day. To help me out if you're available. And it actually works out that, she's taking some classes, getting ready to go to PA school. And she actually has some hours to spare a couple of days of the week that I'm seeing patients. So it kind of like fulfills both of our needs. And I know that's a very, very long story, but the moral of this story is when there's a problem and, we're all, whatever you do, whatever's going on in your life, whether it be personally or professionally, we're part of the human process is confronting issues, dealing with problems. And, the longer I'm on this planet, the grayer my beard gets, the more I realize that there's always a solution. It might not always be immediately evident to you. And sometimes it seems like you're suffocating and the things are just kind of crashing down on you. And, it's easy to kind of give up in a situation like that and just say, hey, you know what? I got this problem and I'm just going to, let it consume me. And, I will tell you based on experience that problems don't get better if they're just kind of like, you're just sitting on them. You have to be proactive about troubleshooting, finding a solution. And it may not always be an obvious solution, but I can promise you that there is always a solution. And, sometimes you need inspiration from somebody in your life. Fortunately, I had someone in my life who just kind of like using as a sounding board just kind of inspired me to, think of this solution, which I think is going to benefit everybody. It's going to benefit my new assistant. It's going to benefit me. It's going to benefit the practice. And ultimately, it's going to benefit my patients, which is really what it's all about. So the doc, I was reminded myself that, I was kind of like, suffocating in this problem and trying to figure out a way out, like how am I going to solve this problem. But you just got to be persistent, and there's always a solution to every problem. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend. I'm just ready to crush the week ahead. Hopefully the Knicks have advanced to the second round. By the time you're listening to this, go Knicks. Gonna be rooting for them hard tonight. And that's all I got to say. Whenever there's a problem, there's always a solution. Let's get it.